Hey, welcome. Point Black. You know, America's future is texting in hate. Behind political slogans about freedom and faith, a group of young conservative leaders, the ones next in line for power, were busy in a private chat praising Hitler, joking about gas chambers, and calling rape epic. These were not random trolls. They were elected chairs and campaign aides, handshakes away from Congress. The leak of those messages isn't just a scandal, it's a spotlight. It reveals what too many have ignored, that extremism isn't hiding on the fringes anymore. It's wearing a suit, attending fundraisers, and calling itself the movement of the future. Today on Point Black, we dig into those chats, not for shock, but for truth. Because when hate becomes casual, justice has to become louder. My name is Adolphus Pruitt. Welcome to Point Black. You know, leaders of the young Republican groups throughout the country they were doing this chat on Telegram, and somehow it got leaked. Interestingly enough, in these chats, they were referring to black people as monkeys, the watermelon people, and they mused about putting political opponents in gas chambers. They talked about raping their enemies and driving them to suicide. They lauded Republicans who they believe supported slavery. I can't use the N-word, but they use various ways of saying the N-word. And if I'm, because I'm on iHeart, I can't get to use it because they use the N-I-G, the N-A-G, and all sort of ways of putting it out there. In some of the chats, they used the word more than a dozen times. And this chat included the vice chair of the New York State Young Republicans at the time. He referred to rape as being epic. Epic. And, it even got worse because some of them put in the messages that everyone who votes no is going to the gas chamber when talking about folks, elected officials who are voting against the president's agenda. Let's be clear. The Young Republican National Federation is 15,000 members strong between the ages of 18 and 40. And so some people argue that these ones at 18, 19, 20, in the early 20s are still, immature. And they're just talking stuff. Well, what about the ones when we get to 30, 35, 40 years old? Think about it. Ladies and gentlemen, think about it. And again, these are the young people whom the Republican Party sees as their farm system. This is their farm club. This is where they go to get acclimated, to get trained, to take public office, if not as an elected official, but as an appointee within the federal government. These are the people who they are training to run this country. BJ, and as far as I was able to tell, based on the research, they never did identify as any of the people in the chat as being black. Now, I don't doubt that there may have been a black Republican or two who was in there. I won't say it's not possible, But all I know is that it is interesting enough when this broke that I didn't see or hear from any black Republican in leadership or elective office to come out and say, Houston, we have a problem. That we got people who are expounding things that we totally disagree with, that is racist, sexist, and among other things, just outright, in some cases, I mean, we start talking about putting elected officials who vote a certain way against the president's agenda, sending them to the gas chamber, in some way outright threatening them and treasonous, if you ask me. But, you know, it played up, it died down, but what folks did not know, more than anything else, that it was 29,000 pages of chats. Now, let's be clear. 29. Now, when we say pages of chat, I want you, if you are using any chat platform out there, I want you to pull up one of the conversations and print a page. I want you to print a page so you see when we say 29,000 pages of chat, on that one page, I can assure you, you're going to have a minimum of 10 chats. One, somebody saying something, reply, and this and that. Some of them may be long-winded, and I'm saying 10. I'm really being generous. I'm saying it could be as many as 15 or 20 if they're doing a bunch of one-liners. But let's just say 10 on average on a page, and 29,000 pages. That's a lot of racially tinged, hated conversations between primarily white Republicans, young Republicans between the ages of 18 and 40, a part of the National Federation of the Republican Party. Those are the conversations they've been having. 29,000 pages worth of it. And, you know, we can't ignore it. You just can't ignore it. Some people would say that, hey, many of the chat members, by the way, many of them already work inside government or party politics, and one is currently serving as a state senator. So we got a state senator. We got somebody who is voting whatever state they're in. I thought it was state of New York, but don't quote me on that. It don't matter. Whatever state it is, that means you have somebody who's voting, introducing potentially legislation, co-sponsoring potentially legislation, most definitely voting on legislation. I can assure you that whether they sponsored a bill or co-sponsored a bill, I can assure you they voted on legislation, who are a part of these conversations. They are part of this group of people who decided that, hey, we're just going to get together and because we on this chat and it's just only us on there, we can say what they want. Now, I just wondered out loud that the Democratic Party has young Democrats. They chatting. I'm quite sure they got a chat thing. I'm quite sure that if their chat consisted of the same sort of stuff, it probably would have got leaked and we'd probably be talking about it. Because it has not come to the surface, more likely than not, it does not exist. But you wonder, so you have one segment, one party with young folks who are maybe talking about, well, I'm quite sure they're saying negative things about the president. Let's be clear. I don't have to see their chats. I guarantee you they are saying some negative things about the president, very negative things about his policies, I'm quite sure they're saying negative things about Republican senators and congresspersons and how they voting and the positions they taking. But I don't think you're going to go in there and you're going to hear hunky redneck. I don't think you're going to hear trailer trash. I don't think you're going to hear, other stuff I can't say. But I don't think you're going to hear anywhere close. And definitely you're not going to hear, you would probably hear them saying that they're treasonous and they need to be locked up, tried and locked up. And they filing a convicted felon and stuff like that. But I doubt you will hear that we need to send them to the gas chamber. I doubt if you're going to hear them young Democrats saying that we ought to hang them, we ought to rape their women. I doubt if you're going to hear them calling them some of the most negative things in the world. I doubt if you're going to hear that. So, hey, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And before we get back, we want you to send us your chats. We want to see what your chats look like. Imagine this. A man nominated by the president to lead the office of special counsel, the very agency that guards fairness in the federal workplaces. He privately said Martin Luther King Jr. holiday belongs in hell. This guy is being nominated by the president, and he says Martin Luther King holiday belongs in hell. Imagine that. He called himself a Nazi-like, mocked entire races as being inferior, and yet his nomination moved forward until these leaks surfaced. Until we got hold of these chats, this cat was on his way. This isn't some dark corner of the internet. This is governance stained by open racism. When powerful people echo hate from history's darkest chapters, it's not political, it's morale. So we're going to take a look at it, folks. You know, I'm at a point now where we have to reach a point where we can no longer, as a race of people, and yes, I'm going to be racial, as people of color, and in some cases as an immigrant of any kind, especially an immigrant of color, we cannot afford to not take a serious look at anything and everything and everybody that's being pushed in positions of power and authority within the federal government right now. Whether it's appointee in HUD, was it appointee for the Department of Transportation, was it appointee for dog catcher. We cannot afford not to look seriously at each and every one of them, because this leak has showed where they coming from. Now, what I did, BJ, I took a little history lesson, because I'm like, wait a minute. I first wanted to know, were these Christians? What was the religious affiliation of these folks writing these chats? Because I'm a missionary Baptist, and I guarantee the stuff they put in those chats is against my religion. My faith says that, hey, no, you cannot think that way, you cannot act that way, you cannot be that way. That is not congruent with the Jesus Christ that I worship. So I did a little poll. I did some research. And they said under the recent national studies indicate that 84% of Republicans identify themselves as Christians. 84%. With 68% being white Christians, 16% being Christians of color, and the remaining 16% include religiously unaffiliated. Among Gen Z, these are the young folks, Republicans in particular, approximately 63% expressed trust or membership in organized religions, which is nearly double that of the Young Independents, which is 38%, and of the Young Democrats, 31%. So what this base interesting. So our Young Democrats are not necessarily believe in Christ. That's interesting. That's interesting. And said, well, while Gen Z as a whole is less religiously affiliated with the older generation, both young Republican membership and the youth wings of the GOP, like those involved in the recent chat scandal, are still majority Christian. Survey data shows that the majority of Republican teens, 73%, consider themselves affiliated with or trusting organized religion with support for Christian nationalism, also notably high at 57% in Gen Z circles. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that last piece, I want you to understand. Christian nationalism is as equivalent to the justification of slavery using the Bible, I believe, as you can get. Now, some folks gonna be mad at me about that. But Christian nationalism, and 57% of the Gen Z and Republican circles they surveyed are among that. They said the majority of young Republican members identify as Christian or belonging to a religious organization, show gradual but persistence in overall, shows there's a growth in overall American youth, including those identifying themselves as the GOP. Ladies and gentlemen, what basically says is that now we're talking about the young folks who are doing these chats are also Christians. They also believe in a higher power. And I guess the Bible I read is a little bit different from theirs, because in mine, you cannot expound, even think, and have that sort of hatred in you and consider yourself to be a Christian. Not in the Bible that I read, but, I know some folks going to say, I don't believe in God, that's why I don't, and all this other stuff. That's neither here nor there. What I'm telling you is that if somebody is a staunch believer and they believe that their religion allows them to take the position that some of these folks take in these chats, what I'm telling you is we have a problem, especially if they grow up to be leadership. Now, I'm going to give you some examples why you may have a problem. Let's go back to the colonial period. Let's go back to, oh, my God, the colonial period. When we got here on the Mayfair. I mean, BJ, I guess my ancestors and yours came on them. They didn't come on the Mayfair. They came, well, if they did, it was in the belly of the Mayfair. Ours come here through Virginia and maybe through South Carolina, North Carolina, and some of the, maybe even New Orleans, but we didn't come here on the Mayflower. BJ, did your people get here on the Mayflower? I mean, they might be, I didn't think about it. It's Dr.
Yeah. Doctor, man. Yeah, they drove.
They drove. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, we had cars in the colonial period. But Christianity was dominant in the colonial period. White colonists attended Anglican, Puritan, Baptist, and other Protestant congregations. Enslaved Africans were excluded. Let's be clear. In the colonial period, they believed in God, they belonged to these religious organizations, and enslaved Africans were excluded. Religion was used to justify slavery, referencing biblical passages and declaring black people as being divinely ordained to serve whites. Now, that's what they believed in the colonial period. The Bible justified that black people were defined. You know what? Now that I think about it, in some ways, it's a little bit of a compliment in there, because they said God defined, we were divinely, we were lifted into being slaves by God. That's interesting. God blessed us in many ways, but I didn't think that was one of them. But according to their Bible, in the colonial days. So, wait a minute, Pruitt, that was back then. That was the Mayflower. We just took the land from the Indians and all that other stuff. Okay, let's move up to Jim Crow. Slavery was over with. Nearly all whites and substantial majority of black Africans Americans were affiliated with Christian congregations, but rigidly segregated. 94% of black parishioners attended black churches as late as 1968. Let's be clear. So in colonial period, white people attended their churches. Enslaved black people could not attend. 1968, Jim Crow era, same thing. Southern white churches generally supported Jim Crow practices, validating racial ideology with religious rhetoric. So here we go again. We in the 60s now. We back in the 60s, ladies and gentlemen. I know you said, well, that was a colonial period. Well, same thing in the 60s. They said many ministers preached that segregation and white supremacy were part of the Southern way of life. Rooted in Christianity, while African-American churches focused on spiritual salvation and later as a base for civil rights organizing. Jim Crow, that's 68. So I guess, folks will say, well, Pruitt, wait a minute. Still, that's Jim Crow. That's 68, 70s. What are you saying? We've had civil rights. Well, okay, let's do the post-civil rights movement after the 60s, 1960. Church segregation did decline. Most congregations remain racially homogenous. That's what they basically saying, especially in the South. People started migrating into different churches. Churches became a little bit more diverse. But in most cases, they stayed either lily white or lily black. Christian affiliation remained strong, but began to decline among younger generations. But the religious rhetoric within the churches became less overtly segregationist, even as implicit bias and structural indifference persisted. Basically, we quit saying it. They're like, okay, the young folks are leaving. We can't say that no more. We can't talk about it, but you know what? Women can't be no preachers. Black folks, we ain't marrying no racial mixed couples or no gay couples. We can't say it, but we can send a message that, if you walk up in this church, we give you that look. BJ, give you that side eye. Give that side eye, make you feel a little uncomfortable. And you said, no, I think we better move on. They said the Christian rights influence increased in politics, sometimes invoking religiously coded language about social order and traditional values, while mainstream churches gradually became more inclusive. So again, we had these churches, this Christian right, the Christian nationalists, we just talked about 57% of the young Republican members, Christian nationalists, they like, hey, we don't care what them other folks doing. We're going to have some coded language because we don't want to be outed. But, hey, listen, you remember how we were during the colonial days? Don't give up the fight. Don't give up the fight. Hold the line. Hold the line. We're gonna find a way to get these niggers out of here. Hold the line. And you know what? I should have did a little bit more research. 'Cause I would love to know what some of that coded language is. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna come back one day. I'm gonna find that coded language. It'd be interested to know what coded language can you use within the church that says keep the Negroes out of here, keep the gays out of here. We want to stay white Christian values. We want to stick to those Puritan days when our folks came off the Mayflower. We want to hold up to all of this. We've been fighting through all this other stuff, and we had to go underground. But hold the line, because we got somebody coming into power. We got the white savior, the white Christian nationalist savior coming into power. We told y'all God was going to return. We just didn't tell you he's going to have orange hair. He's back. Because now that we have a president whom will say that everybody has a right to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to live whatever values they want to live. Everybody has the right to do it, except for, especially on the freedom of speech, especially if you're attacking him or somebody in his party. Now, then that's not necessarily freedom of speech. You're subject to repercussions for that. That ain't the same. But if we, the founding fathers of this country, founded this country on these colonial white values, and what they decided and the country they was trying to build was a country for white folk who live under certain traditions and values that go all the way back, far back as to colonialism. It goes all the way back, and it's been a foundation in some cases of our religious organizations. They go all the way back to where they have withstood the test of time. We may have to have hide it. We may have to shield it. We may even have to code it with language. But hold on. Hold the line. Hold the line. Somebody's coming. And now they're here. So today, ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. Christian affiliation among young Americans, Gen Z and millennials, is a little bit lower, 45 to 54%, except for young, majority, white Republicans, at minimum, the 15,000 of the National Federation of the Republican Party, the young folks, 15,000 between the ages of 18 and 40, whom in some cases have risen to power or occupying positions in government where they have decision-making authority, managerial authority, and other authorities that control and determine the faith of everybody in this country, and especially the faith and the conditions in which people of color had to live in this country and operate in this country, raise their children in this country with the hopes that life would be better for them in the future than it was for our people during the colonial period. We was enslaved. During the Jim Crow era, we was coming out of slavery. During the Civil Rights Movement, with Martin Luther King and other organizations, NAACP, SNCC, Urban League, where all these other organizations came about, through all of that, where those things can exist and do what they need to do. Now, modern racist rhetoric is less likely to openly invoke biblical justification. But coded language referencing order, remember I told you about that coded language? They use the word order, freedom, heritage and traditional values mirror the same historic defenses that they use going as far back as the colonial period. Let's be clear. Order, and for some reason, ladies and gentlemen, when they talk about us and the black community, disorder is the word they use. We just a bedrock of crime, not working, we lazy. The whole kidney boom. Order, let's be clear. Police, everybody else, black community, order. We want you, you're not in order. And let's be clear, folks, when they use the word order, do not exclude the cultural context in which it applies. Because order on the Indian reservation, order in the Jewish synagogue, order in the mosque, order in the black community, order in the Far Eastern communities is different. Order is different. Order means different things in each one of those cultural contexts. Order in this Christian nationalist affiliation thing is that if you don't live your life like we live ours, then you're out of order. The only real order is culturally how we live our lives. In some cases, they would tell you, oh, BJ, I guess I shouldn't say this, but hey, in the bedroom, missionary position, that's order. When it comes to dinner, everybody sitting at the dinner table, start with prayer, that's order. When it comes to dating and marriage, staying within your own race and opposite sex, that's order. That's what they mean by order. When it comes to, oh my God, when it comes to anything that they do as a culture and community, except the stuff they do under the table, because let's be clear, you got just as many rapists, just as many pedophiles, just as many, whatever the scum of the earth you want to use, they got just as many of them, but they don't consider that a part of disorder. That's just, we got some hiccups. But when they say order, that's what they mean. I don't want you to misunderstand what they mean by order. When you go to a gathering of all black folks and we partying, we may be making some noise, dancing, that's not order. You go to a white social event, that's order. That's what they mean by order. Hey, we're going to take a quick break because I'm going to bring you the codes back because I want you to know what they are. We'll be back with more on Point Black. Keep it in order. We're going to keep it in order. Be in order. Again, we are back. And thank God I am black. Now, I know there may be some folks who said sometimes they wish they weren't black because they think if they was another color, they would have the privileges and to do all these other stuff in the world. I got interviewed the other day by my good friend Gary with Them Your People. And he was telling me about he said, well, bro, tell them what the NAACP means. Because a lot of folks, I said the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And yeah, I'm colored people. I don't have a problem with being color because color has culture. It's a culture that everybody wants to have. They just don't want to wear the color. They love the culture. They just want it without the color. We was talking about those again, modern racist rhetoric is less likely to openly invoke biblical justification for racism, but coded language referencing order, we just talked about order, freedom, and what they would say as freedom is, of course, freedom to religion, freedom to do this, freedom to do that, except for when it contradicts order, the order that they talking about. Because we've been fighting for freedom since we got here on the boats in Virginia. We've been fighting for, I told somebody the other day, I said, do you think that black folk are not still fighting for freedom in this country? Do you think, I had a debate with somebody the other day, I said, do you honestly believe that black folk, people of color, who can be identified visually as being somebody of color, do you honestly believe they enjoy the same freedoms to the same extent of somebody who can visually can be identified as being Anglo-Saxon white? Do you honestly believe we have that type of freedom? It's impossible. Unfortunately, it's impossible. And the reason why it's impossible, because we just talked about the text. We just talked about the rhetoric. We just talked about the folks who are moving to the positions of power and influence. We just talked about what's going on in this country today and how people are talking and acting. We just talked about that. And if you believe, let's be clear, if you believe that the rhetoric that you're hearing today from the folks who say get rid of DEI, from the folks who say kill the woke, from the folks who say get rid of LGBTQ, whatever, to the folks who say get rid of the trans, for the folks who say black folks are lazy, folks who say get them off of welfare. When you hear the rhetoric from them, do you honestly believe that they saying that because they want to give you freedom? What they're saying is you don't have the freedom to be a part of that. They want to take your freedom away from you. If you believe, and BJ drives me crazy sometimes. Because I don't think everybody white is a racist. I don't think everybody white is trying to infringe on my freedom. I do believe that constitutionally, how it is viewed by the people in power, that I thought of what freedom is different from the freedom that they're exercising when it comes to dealing with black people, especially in the courts. I do not believe that the court system that we have today, when they say the scales of justice are balanced, I don't think it is possible when we have people who we just talked about with those texts and stuff, who in some cases, the folks that came before them were doing the same checks, except we didn't have the technology, so we couldn't get hold of their text, but think and feel the same way. So this thing about freedom, I want you on your own to identify. I want you to think about this, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to think about, how do you think freedom for you look like? What would freedom for you look like? Pull out a piece of paper. Just make notes. I think freedom for me is this, is that, is that. Just make a list. And then put a line on one side of it. Then on the other side of it, I want you to list what you think freedom is right now for people who don't look like you. And then I want you to compare that list. And if you write the same thing on both sides, then I guess you're free. I can personally assure you my list of just the stuff gonna be different on BJ, is your list gonna be the same on both sides? No, you're shaking your head. No, you don't have freedom. Courtney, is the list gonna be the same? No, Vidal, my videographer, is the list gonna be the same? I don't think. I dare you. I dare you. Pull out a piece of paper. Make 2 columns. Jot down what you think freedom will look like for you. And then on the other side, jot down what you think freedom looks like for people who don't look like you. And tell me if they the same. Call in to BJ. Go to the app. Send BJ a hate note. Said damn it, Pruitt is get him off there. He done made me mad because I'm looking at my list and I'm just more pissed now than I was before. Because I thought I was halfway free. But now that I look at the list. Man, and some folks gonna say, see, I told you we was going backwards. So for those folks who say you think we're going backwards, I want you to go to your mother, grandmother, somebody who lived through the 50s and the 60s, if you go further back than that, and do the list for them. And then compare it to yours. So when you say, I think we're going backwards, you first I want you to understand what backwards look like, because I guarantee you, their list for freedom, what freedom looks like for them, I guarantee you that a lot of that you will find on the other side of your list. Because you folks say we're going backwards. I'm like, no, you don't know what backwards look like. I hate to say it. You don't know what backwards look like. Don't go look at what was Alvin, what was BJ, no, I'm losing my mind. Don't go look where the modern what was the slavery movie? Roots. Go. If you don't go back and look at Roots, or go look at Django Unchained, just go back and look at some of that stuff, and then come back and tell me that we done gone back. Hey, BJ, have you gone backwards yet, BJ?
Nah, I don't think I have.
You don't think? Yeah, I mean, you know.
Yeah, that was a different time back then.
Yeah, I think they don't know what backwards look like. I mean, I'm not saying again. I said we ain't freedom. We don't have freedom. But boy, we got some freedoms now. If you go back to the 60s, I just went down the list from that colonial and Jim Crow. And go back and your list gonna be different. Go back and interview somebody. And then the other word they used was heritage. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's a coded word. When white folk, when they start saying heritage, the heritage they talking about is from colonialism going forth. The country that they founded, that they said these founding fathers was trying to create, that's the heritage that they're talking about. Don't be confused when you see heritage. Don't think about that, oh, that meant when we used to have Afro Day in the Park. That is a part of black heritage, but that ain't the heritage they talking about. You know, and the last word, I'm gonna let you go with this, and BJ, this gets it all. Traditional values. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The traditional values, we talked about it. Colonialism, I brought you up to speed. Listen, ladies and gentlemen. Folk who are gonna be in position of power are talking. They're talking language that goes back and hints to the days of yore. And it ain't days in favorable of black folk. So you better listen up, you better stand up, and you better be ready to step up, because it's going to take all of us. Appreciate you listening in. This has been another episode of Point Black. Hey, y'all, and let's not forget, we celebrated another walk for cancer early in the month. BJ, how did it go?
Man, it went great, man. It was great. Very good turnout. Had some people who got mammograms on site. 16th annual Sister Strut. Huge success. But more importantly, man, too, another note, got to say congratulations to Reverend Darrell Gray, who received his honorary doctorate degree. So do we call him Reverend Doctor, or do we go Dr. Reverend? How does that work?
The Right Reverend Doctor.
The Right Reverend Doctor.
The Right Reverend Doctor.
Hey, he's received his doctorate degree, man, and just want to say congratulations to him.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. This has been all Point Black.